It's my privilege now to introduce Pierre Labossiere of Haiti Action Committee, one of our own EPI board members. Pierre is co-founder of Haiti Action Committee and Haiti Emergency Relief Fund, established in the Bay Area in 1991 and 2004, respectively, working with Haiti's grassroots movement that is engaged in the struggle for justice and democracy. Haiti Action Committee and Haiti Emergency Relief provide information regarding conditions on the ground, assist refugees, and support community-based initiatives and institutions working for the liberation and rebuilding of Haiti. Pierre Labossiere will inform us on Haiti's struggle for democratic self-governance. Pierre.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Ecumenical Peace Institute, for having me. And Rick, thank you for this very powerful presentation about sanctions and what they do. And the people of Haiti right now have a taste of sanctions, even though it's not being presented as such, because what's going on right now in Haiti, there has been an artificially created gasoline shortage and diesel shortage that has caused many hospitals, many institutions to pretty much grind to a halt, and has ground to a halt various activities throughout the country, including schools, students being able to go to school. And there have been, and people's humor deals with it in the sense of making jokes about it. Groups of young people have been on bicycles to say enough with this, what's going on. So it's not an officially declared sanction by a particular country, but basically what many people have been discussing is the fact that the Haitian people have been opposed to another rise in the price of gasoline, which has been affected the majority population terribly. And so people have been opposed to this. So one of the ways that they are putting pressure on the population has been to limit the gasoline and diesel and kerosene, any petroleum products, to such an extent as to make people really stop opposing what there will be when the gas will become available, and people will be more than happy to pay whatever the high price is, as now people are paying incredible amounts for a gallon of gasoline. So this is one thing. And when Haiti as a nation was founded in 1804, 1806, the US as a young country, being very much dependent and having slavery as an institution, having its society based on slavery, basically imposed an embargo on Haiti so that in an effort to crush the new nation founded by formerly enslaved Africans who had broken their chains and declared themselves an independent nation. And so the US refused to recognize the independence of Haiti and joined with France and the other slave-owning powers at the time, Britain, Spain, in order to destroy this example of human beings fighting for their rights and for the rights, for their rights to dignity. And it was a threat to human bondage everywhere. And Haiti had the gall to say and to proclaim to the world that it's an independent nation, and it declared itself a sanctuary nation, appealing to enslaved human beings, enslaved Africans and people of indigenous origin to come to Haiti, and Haiti will welcome them, and they can gain Haitian citizenship and live as free human beings in Haiti. And so in the same way, Haiti invited people who are fighting for freedom everywhere to come. So all of this affirmation of human rights and dignity and self-determination brought about incredible sanctions on Haiti, and particularly from the US when, and it wasn't until 1862, during the Civil War, that because of the rise of the forces, of the progressive forces, Black forces in the US, and the abolitionists and the current sentiment that was in effect at the time against the institution of slavery to defeat the Confederacy. And that's when President Lincoln actually recognized the independence of the Haitian state. So bringing it more to the present in line with these sanctions. What's going on in Haiti right now? I mentioned what the current situation, and which is another aspect of what's been plaguing, of what's been imposed on the Haitian people, resulting in miserable conditions. And this, we can say, these miserable conditions, we can say that they date back to the US invasion of Haiti in 1915. So from 1915 to 1934, the United States had boots on the ground in Haiti. So from this time on, we can say that Haiti became really under US domination. And this domination is continuing to the present with very harsh, dire consequences, increasingly harsher consequences for the majority population in the US. And this is what is bringing us to this massive exodus of people, of refugees from Haiti. Many of them went to various countries. Number one, the Dominican Republic, which is next door, then to the various countries of Central America, the Caribbean, and later on Brazil and Chile. And now what we have seen at the US-Mexico border are this massive wave of refugees having fled Haiti to other countries in the Americas, now have made their way to the border of US-Mexico border, where they are brutally, as we have seen, brutally treated in a very racist way by the US government, by the Biden administration, continuing the policy of Trump, continuing the policy of Obama. And these are things that we need to rise up against. So how did we get here? I mentioned 1915, the international, when the US landed boots on the ground against what at the time was taking place, which was a people's uprising to defend their rights to the land, to defend their rights to work the land, to demand land distribution. And this was a particularly successful series of uprisings that were taking place. So the US invaded just to make sure that the status quo could be maintained. So fast forwarding, when the US left in 1934, then they through the Haitian military, as is the case in many countries of the Americas, they continued to impose domination on Haiti by maintaining the rule of a minority against the majority population. Really, in a sense, having excluding the majority population from participation in the democratic life of the country, from participation in the decision-making, from participation in having access to services and to the rights that they themselves are entitled to as human beings, number one, and as citizens of Haiti. So this is what went on. And usually people stop there in 1934 and don't follow the century of US domination of Haiti to the present. So Papa Doc Duvalier is the other reference that people are familiar with when it comes to Haiti. Papa Doc and Baby Doc Duvalier, that terrible dictatorship, which is part of a series of an imposition of rulers on the Haitian people, who the Haitian people did not vote for. And these rulers were puppet rulers, continuing and making sure that what the US wanted out of Haiti, which is exploitation of our resources, which is to prevent Haitians from being sovereign in their decision-making, that in other words, this is what was continued throughout that period up until today. By 1986, after people revolted against the Duvalier dictatorship, it was under Baby Doc, what we've had has been a series of military dictators, again, with full support of the US. And finally, by 1990, the people of Haiti, through their incredible resistance, in alliance with various forces throughout the world, progressive forces, people in Haiti were successful in having the first free democratic election in the country's history. And that's when they elected Jean-Bertrand Aristide, Father Aristide, the parish priest, who wrote the book In the Parish of the Poor, and it was as a leader of the movement, people drafted him to run for office, and he was elected president. Now, why do I bring this up? Because number one, this was a people's movement, organized election that resulted in what the people wanted. And what was the Aristide government mandate? The mandate was to change the structures of the country, to make the country more democratic, to make the country democratic. What does that mean? It didn't mean by that to just vote every 5 years for president. It's meant simply to take the resources, participatory democracy, where people have access to the decision-making, where people can decide how we're going to use the tax monies that our labor is producing, and having them being brought to us in terms of services, such as hospitalization, education, access to clean drinking water, to potable water, having providing education for our children, providing support for our farmers, making sure that the factory workers are getting paid wages, livable wages, and making sure that the country invests in affordable housing. So this is what the Famille Lavalas government of President Aristide, both before the 1991 coup d'etat and later on after, when it came back to the presidency in 2000, in the elections of 2000, was able to do and implemented a series of measures with phenomenal results. For example, the investment that they did in the school system was tremendous in terms of building. The Famille Lavalas government of President Aristide built more schools, more high schools, primary schools throughout the country, particularly in the rural areas that before never had any schooling, really, any schools that were built for the majority population that was based in the rural areas. And most importantly, and I know EPI really would like this, this was a government that was elected by the people of Haiti with the philosophy of the liberation theology, where they were beating the swords into plowshares. What I mean by that is the Haitian military, before created by the US during the occupation, had been taking 40% of the national budget to do what? To get weapons from the US, because Haiti makes no weapons. Those weapons were used against the Haitian population. Those weapons were used against the labor unions, to break up the labor unions. Whenever the unions were organizing for wages, because runaway factories leaving the US could come to Haiti and pay people 20 cents per day, back then. And now they're only paying $5 a day for a 10-hour workday. So, and when people were rising up, you had the police and the military beating them up. So President Aristide was empowered by the Haitian people to get rid of this military that kept on doing coup d'etats after coup d'etats and massacres of the people, so that it could maintain the status quo that would benefit a small little clique of business elite that was allied with powerful forces in the US and also in France and Canada and what have you. So the struggle actually went on, and people fought back in that way. And President Aristide, by disbanding the military, the money saved was invested based on their program Investir dans l'humain, which is the book here that I'm showing, investing in people. And this was the platform of Famille Lavalas, which directed that those resources could be better used to serve the majority population. Symbolic to that, Lavalas, famille Lavalas, decommissioned the equivalent of the Pentagon in Haiti. It was called Grand Quartier Général des Forces Armées, the general headquarters of the armed forces. So it was decommissioned and the building turned over to the newly created Ministry for Women's Affairs because the women of Haiti were neglected, their health was neglected, their rights as citizens was made, they were treated worse than second-class citizens. So by having a Ministry for Women Affairs that could deal with all these issues affecting women, and when we are talking women, we are talking the basic structure of the family that could address that. And so this was something that was being addressed. This is what the Bush administration, I'm talking Bush the son, could not stand. It could not stand this program that was implemented, that was being implemented by Haitians to help Haitians. Haitians committed to help Haitians, not people committed to line their pockets while they are giving away the resources of Haiti, resources such as gold, silver, marble, copper, bauxite for free to US-based corporations, Canadian corporations. And President Harrison said, no, we have the gold, we have these items. If you want them, then we will negotiate a contract that will benefit the Haitian people because those resources are the property of the Haitian people. So 2004, we had a coup d'etat, very brutal, second coup d'etat against the famille Lavalas government. And one took place in 1991, but because of the tremendous organization of the people, the resistance and international resistance, we turned that around. And so by 2004, there was the second coup d'etat, which was a very bloody affair. Over 10,000 people lost their lives. And as a result, what we are living through today, and I'm sorry, there is a little lighting here. Trying to decrease the light. And what we are living through today in Haiti is a direct consequence of that second coup d'etat of 2004, which and the continuing US, United Nations, United States occupation of Haiti. So today, Haiti, the people of Haiti have continued to resist this coup d'etat. The corporate media and many other, including the progressive media, they don't make that connections. So I would love for people who are watching to make the connections between the coup d'etat of 2004 and the continued resistance of the Haitian people in refusing to accept this coup d'etat. And this is what this whole situation today is all about. What was created? What is creating this reign of terror that the Haitian people are living through today? This wave of kidnapping sweeping all over Haiti, the brutal repression of the Haitian police going way back since the coup d'etat, the new founding, the resurrection of the death squads, of the Duvalier type death squads, the Tonton Makouts, if they have another name now. In the media, they call them gangs. It's a way to camouflage, it's a way to hide the reality. What is it? These are the Tonton Makouts. But basically, when you call them gangs, that means the US occupation, the US-UN occupation, present day, has nothing to do with it. They are outside the law. These are outlaw elements. But by their own words and by various accounts of people, observers of Haiti, the occupation governments of Haiti since 2004 have been providing these groups with weapons, working them. They've been working in tandem with the police to terrorize the population. Every time the people are rising up, every time people have demonstrations, they work side by side with the Haitian police to massacre the population. There have been several massacres that have taken place in working class neighborhoods of Haiti, simply to prevent, to force people to accept a brutal situation that is unacceptable to human beings. And people are saying, no, we are human beings. We have the right to clean water. Our children have a right to education. We have a right to health care. Our peasant farmers have a right to that their tax money be returned to them in terms of credit so that they can invest in their farms. We have the right to have clean water. And these are basic human rights that our brothers and sisters are demanding in Haiti, and they are being massacred as a result. Now, Haiti is awash with weapons, sophisticated weapons, assault weapons. Those who they are presenting as gangs, who are actually death squads, government affiliated death squads, who the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, stated that these people were actually doing a good job. I'm paraphrasing what he said, because he said in the areas, in the neighborhoods they control, homicide rate has gone down. Where did he get that? I don't know. So this is a pure admission that Haitian lives to these people, to Antonio Guterres. Now remember, he's the Secretary General of the UN. Haitian lives do not matter to him because these are the very people who have been committing massacres all over Haiti, taking people's lands, burning down their homes, the very homes that their tax money through the Lavalas government of President Aristide had established, had built for them, affordable housing, good housing. They've been setting fire to them, pushing the people out, expropriating them, sending them away. And this is what is connected. These are the push factors. This is what people are fleeing from in Haiti today. So today we have a situation in Haiti where kidnapping is at an all-time high. I know it has reached the media because you've had a number of American missionaries kidnapped, but these are the realities that Haitian clergy, Haitian everyday Haitian people, including students. As I'm talking to you today, there was an attempted kidnapping, and which was foiled right in front of a school in Port-au-Prince. And as it was being foiled, they sprayed the many students were wounded by the gunfire that the death squads sprayed them with. And this is the situation. No one is spared. So all of this is happening while Haiti is under United Nations occupation. People need to understand that. In the press, they make it appear as if, well, it's Haitians. No, it is not. Haiti is being ruled by a core group entities, by a core group of entities, an international core group, which is made up of the representative of the United Nations, the representative of the Organization of American States, the US ambassador, the representative of you have Spain, Canada, France, Germany, the US. So there are 9 of them all together, and they call themselves the core group of friends of Haiti. With friends like that, they are clearly enemies of the Haitian people. And so Haitians call them the core gang, meaning that they are in charge of all that gang that they call those death squads that are operating in Haiti. So this is what we are dealing with at the moment in the country. But what are the Haitian people doing about it? People in Haiti have been organizing. From Lavalas 3 years ago came out with a proposal to get away as a solution to the crisis. And it's called Salut, people called it Salut Public for short, but it's a proposal to create a government of public safety to deal with the issues affecting the population of Haiti. And this is what's going on. And right now we have a total of there are hundreds of organizations throughout the country that have signed on to this. They have signed on to this proposal. They have expanded it. Each one put in their own additional items. And so it is looking at the refoundation of the Haitian state. What does it call for? To rebuild our democratic institutions, to deal with the immediate needs of the people in terms of healthcare, in terms of having schools that are operating for teachers to get paid, having proper sanitation in the country, and establishing a climate and deal with that corruption that is killing the Haitian people. And so with that, we are hoping the US is opposed to it because the US wants elections immediately to occur in Haiti or in the next 2, 3, 4 months, whatever they are proposing. But the Haitian people are saying, no, we don't want that. First, we need to bring peace and stability of a Haitian solution, a grassroots organized solution to the problem. And then we can build the structures that will make the country safe enough to have proper elections, not show elections where the results are already predetermined in Washington down to the local representatives, but elections where the Haitian people can actually come out freely and democratically elect representatives of their choosing who will be looking out and representing their interests. So I want to stop right here. I want to urge your support, your solidarity. We need to let people know what's going on in Haiti, and the more faith-based organizations and other organizations that can decode the myth from the lies, the better it will be for our people and help us out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pierre, for educating us on Haiti's heroic struggle. Please put your questions for Pierre in the chat.